Morning!
Good morning.
Yay!
Rise and shine.
Rise and shine on this romantic
Valentine's.
We're off to North Devon to go visit our mate Bruce Parry to talk about mental health in the context of tribal communities, of which he has a wealth of experience since his whole life really. But many of you may remember him from the 2007? 6? I know the book was published in 2007. I know because I was swatting up on it this morning. Tribe series on BBC.
Which I think I got as a Christmas present, probably in 2007 when it came out.
Well, we're going to go for a nice pub lunch and then we're going to chat to him about things and stuff. Here we go. Multitasking. What are you recording now? Devon is heaven. We are 1 minute away from Bruce's house. We're going to go grab some lunch and then shoot the breeze. Oh look, the seaside. We've made it to sunny North Devon here in Linton with our mate Bruce, and we're off to the pub to go and break bread and have a chit chat about what's to come.
I'm writing at the moment.
Yeah.
I've still got lots I want to say and things I want to talk about.
Well, we have got one space on the boat left, really.
Oh, I know, well, you know.
Break YouTube.
40 hours of... Oh, wait, did we come the right way? Shit, I think we took the wrong turn. Never mind.
We've just had a questionable lunch at a local boozer. I had a delicious mushroom pie that I didn't order.
I had a beef pie that I really didn't order and didn't want.
But you're a vegan.
I am
you
vegan.
said not to tell your girlfriend, and now this is going to go on social media. Tell her not to watch the episode. That's an 80 series Land Cruiser. Love that car. You know, I'm walking back up the hill, and it's beautiful, but quite exhausting.
It really is.
Conversation has dipped. Look at that. Here we are. The funicular railway. That's pretty badass, isn't it? And so you say it's water powered? Okay. You just add a few hundred kilos of water at one end.
Yeah, they just fill it up at the top, emptied at the bottom. That's it. 100%, just pure water weight.
We do overcomplicate things nowadays, don't we?
Amazing.
Have returned after quite a significant hike up the hill to Bruce's place. We're gonna have a cup of tea and then we're gonna head out and shoot some shit on the hills. Once we've had a rest, we put our feet up, boys. Haven't we? We're gonna watch Netflix and forget to do this.
I'm going to show these guys about another boat that crossed the Atlantic. That's going to make them laugh.
So the premise is this guy who may have been a few sandwiches short of the picnic, done a lot of incredible things in his life, including one which was building a boat out of scrap wood and containers off the New York coast and sailing it across the Atlantic. So there's hope for us yet.
I don't think it's on there.
I'm afraid about what can happen to the boat, but I'm mainly afraid about me not having the strength to do this. About me having to hide under the covers of my room all the way across. And I can't find the willpower to take me through this.
Some casual viewing for you guys.
I mean, I think that's quite a poignant bit.
I mean, it's...
We were 126 yesterday.
Remy, you look so concerned.
I mean, it's a mix of like
Admiration and
admiration, dread, fear, but also like they did it on a thing made from like bits of scrap wood and scrap fabric. We have a boat. Well, we will have a boat. Currently, it's
I
just
thought it would be inspirational.
Yeah. secretly knowing that it would also be dread food, sort of inducing.
Yeah, it's mixed emotions, I have to say. Your experience of visiting tribes, living with them, is poor mental health as prevalent in traditional societies as it is in the modern world? And physical and mental conditions maybe, but what is it about our societies that creates so much dissolution and dissatisfaction and isolation? It's kind of a double question.
There's a couple of questions in there. And it's obviously, firstly, incredibly hard to generalize, because indigenous peoples are very different all over the world, and they all have their difficulties and complexities just as we do. But I do think that when I have had the privilege of living with peoples who are living a very traditional life, when they're solid in their understanding of who they are and their community and their location and their lifestyle, and they haven't got deep pressures of being impacted by the outside world, which many of them do, but the ones that I've met that are living really in their traditional way, generally, no, they don't seem to be having the same kinds of issues around mental health. And that's really fascinating. It's like, I don't see the same tendencies for addictive behavior patterns. I don't see the same tendencies for depression. I don't see the same tendencies for sort of negative behavior patterns. And that's not painting them as utopian or perfect in any way. Of course they have their ups and downs, but those particular things around addictive behavior patterns, it's really curious that they're not really evident. I can see people sit and watch the river go by and not feeling agitated and needing to do something. It's like literally a sense of inner peace and tranquility that is really remarkable. And I've seen that many, many places. And obviously thought about it a lot and have my own ideas and understandings of what it's about and why it is like that, and why it's not like that in me and not like that in our society. So I know that's the second part of your question, but just before I sort of paint this sort of perfect picture of indigenous peoples, the other thing that I've noticed is that can go very quickly when certain things happen to those groups. So there's other groups that I visited where the suicide rates and the depression rates and the addiction rates are amongst the highest in the world. And that's when people have been removed from their location, removed from their traditional life ways.
In a sort of...
in a forcible way.
In a forcible, like many of the Aborigines in Australia.
All of that stuff.
Yeah.
Or the North Americans, or the Greenlanders, or many places. And Greenland being an example that I went to visit, for example, orphanages where the children were all there from abusive parents or parents that committed suicide, and the terrible stresses of the children there. And then you scratch at the surface as to why, and it's because they'd been removed from the locations or that they had traditionally lived in, and the ways that they had traditionally hunted, and had sort of come into town and lost their identity, basically, lost the idea of who they were.
And the sense of home.
And also being given money and things like that, which complicates things. And there's all of this stuff that we think that we're doing to help, and actually can really double the issues. So when I say that I've seen this amazing lack of addictive and mental health issues in communities, I don't mean that across all indigenous groups. It's like the ones that are still living traditionally is what I mean, and that's where I've seen it. And I think that a lot of it is to do with knowing who you are and knowing where you're from and having a sense of purpose and living with a group of people who have a shared understanding, a shared set of values, a shared work ethic, and also workload. So a community, especially a community living in a space where they have an understanding of their relationship with the environment, a spiritual connection with the environment. All of these things build into a sense of knowing and feeling whole.
And what about the roles within those communities? I mean, from us, we are the Greater Man Challenge. We are focusing on men's mental health, which affects everybody. We were wondering and talking this morning is, how do the roles differentiate when someone is, you said that in some groups it's not as prevalent when they sort of lose their way from a mental health perspective. How do they bring them back? Down
all
to
sorts of ways. I mean, like a number of groups, especially like the egalitarian groups, which are the ones that I'm particularly interested in. That's like the nomadic hunter-gatherers. They take it upon themselves, every member of the group, that if they ever see one person going down, everybody will bring them up, because they know that if one goes down, everyone goes down. And so it's like a collective looking out for each other. And it's not like a role where there is an individual who is the shamanic figure or the medicine figure or what. It's like, no. Everybody's role is to make sure that if someone goes down, they bring them up, and also at the same time make sure that if someone starts thinking there are more, to bring them down. And they have tools and mechanisms for both of those. And that's actually what my belief is, and it's part of the book that I'm writing, is like how we were for the majority of our time as a species. That's actually our natural state, and we had these extraordinary societies that really figured that out. Power, well-being, and the other thing I was going to say, not only is this the reason I feel that what I've witnessed with Indigenous people is the sense of identity and belonging. That's one thing. But the other thing is, I think there's a lot to do with child rearing. And that's the other side of the coin. It's like, I do think that if you're living in a way where you have shared paternity, shared maternity, the things that should happen to a child happen, and the things that shouldn't happen to a child don't happen, because it's mitigated amongst the group.
Yes.
Everybody is part of the parenting.
This is where the old saying comes from: it takes a village to raise a child.
For sure.
And what I'm hearing from what you're saying, the answers to all those questions is that, it's a mixture. Why the sort of, bad mental health, bad mental fitness is so prevalent in our society is a mixture of socialization, conditioning, and a lack of community and a lack of support, because we all live in silos. And we were discussing this morning, is that, there's not this sort of expectation. When you live in a nuclear family, as so many people do in our society, there is an expectation of your partner to give you everything that you need. And you're two people, very, very lonely and isolated, surrounded by millions of people who live 3 feet from you, but no one's living and working together in community. And those unfair expectations, bridled with the fact that you're completely overwhelmed because you're not getting the support you need, lead to the breakdown of 50% of relationships.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely.
Marriages.
I think that's absolutely the case, and and it's hard. We've kind of created the world that we wanted, only waking up to the fact that it's not very good for us. And so with and you see it with Indigenous groups as well. It's like, give the kids an opportunity to go and work in the newly created timber mill down the road, and they'll go because they don't have to listen to the elders anymore, and they can have this sense of freedom and like earn their own money and do their own thing and play football and don't have to worry about hunting and gathering. And people will rush to that, and then only later realize that actually what they had before was healthy. And the thing is, you rush to that, and then you become moving out into this sort of like ever separating silos or of individualization. Then you get into a space that if you do get traumatized as a kid, and you do have certain sort of behaviors that aren't very socially acceptable, you don't have to deal with it. As in, like, you don't have to look at it. You can exist without anyone telling you you're being a dick.
Which
you're
brings
behaving
no accountability.
Yeah, so all of those things then just get doubled down and passed on, and we're living with like generations of that. With us, lack of communities mean that we haven't been forced into places where we're having to work through our stuff. And that also plays sort of generationally into more and more troubled people, more and more, traumas that are being carried on and then repassed on. And so I think that all of that is playing out too. I'm a big fan of Gabor Mate's work, and I think that, he directly links so much of our addiction to things like trauma.
He says it's a signpost.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it's like, you know, the ways of avoiding dealing with the pain. Now, that pain could be loneliness, it could be lack of identity, or it could be that you were abused as a child, or a dog attacked you. Whatever it is, it's like we don't have the tools, and that's the other thing the indigenous people have, is they have tools whereby we can look at and release those traumas. And we don't. We kind of think, we just put slap a plaster on it rather than actually get to the heart of it and the root of it. And that's the other thing that...
And speaking to those tools, you know, can you give us some examples anecdotally? I know that there's obviously plant medicines from a sort of cultural, I guess, verbal perspective. You know, how do they support one another? You know, what's the vocabulary? What's the language?
Well, interestingly, when I've done plant medicines with indigenous groups, they haven't been using those plant medicines for healing so much as we flock to them for healing, because that's what we need. And in many ways, when I've taken it with them, they're like, oh yeah, you know, it's kind of good for that too, but they're not having to worry about that because they don't have so much to heal. They're looking at it more as a way of bringing the community together, having a relationship with the divine and nature and the forest and the spirit. So that's kind of often more where they're at.
I realise the irony, because it almost sounds like they're just doing it to go and have recreation.
Well, no, but it's not, because it's really important.
But of
it's
course,
really important to reinforce the relationship with the forest. It's really important to reinforce the relationship with the ancestors, and also to have the experience of something beyond, you know. And I think that our original state is that we were able to access that anyway, and a lot of the plant medicines are just sort of tools that have been found in order for us to reconnect with something that we always had. So I do think that is something that is also really important for us. But it is funny that, not funny is the wrong word, but you know, it is interesting that when I've scratched away at the motivations of some of the communities doing plant medicines, it's like, no, the healing is what you guys come for. It's not you. We need it occasionally, but it's not really why we're doing this.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's fascinating. And so plant medicine is massive, and also pharmacologically and chemically and sort of neurologically, we're now beginning to understand what's happening in the brain, in the body, with some of these plant medicines, the way they work on the serotonin, the dopamine, and the sort of neuroplasticity allow us to revisit past traumas and recreate new pathways to those, and even release some of the stuck energy as a result, and then basically stop that thing that was subconsciously affecting our behavior without us even knowing, and allowing that out so that we can re-regulate our nervous system to be more calm and harmonious in our daily life.
Sure.
So that's all unbelievable. And that's the other thing, is like, you know, indigenous people have the plant kingdom contains all of these medicines, and they have medicines for headaches and period pains and you know what. They also have medicines for the psyche. And you know, half of the medicines we use in the West have come from plants, but we just kind of don't use those ones. And there's all sorts of reasons why that might be, because they're powerful and they're dangerous, and they also make you question some of the aspects of society. So there's like, we've sidelined them, but actually there's a renaissance now, which is something I'm very excited about. It's complicated and it's dangerous, but like those plant medicines are coming back into an understanding that they might be really needed for this particular mess that we found ourselves in.
Yeah. And in the context of the project that we're doing, you know, we're not changing, you know, we're not, you know, putting down a blueprint to change the entire world, but the point that we're trying to make is to redefine what masculinity means. And I think wanted to bring that back around of like, what is masculinity to you? What is healthy masculinity? Because, you know, our education system, particularly in this country, has a hangover from the Victorian era. And boys have been underperforming for 35, 40 years next to girls because of the way the system is. And then they're being prepared for a world that doesn't exist anymore. And then with social media, toxic masculinity gets bandied around. We've all seen adolescence. You know, what is it to be a man now? Because boys are growing up to be scared of being a man. And sometimes I second guess. I'm like, well, what is it? What is masculinity to me? How do I embody that? And what for you, from your opinion, is a healthy blueprint for masculinity in today's world?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very, very difficult question, and I also struggle with this myself. You know, I'm inspired, as you know, by the egalitarian groups that I've been with. And the reason why is for the reasons I've shared, is because they're the ones that I feel are the most harmonious and the types of society that have worked best. Now, I've lived with many other indigenous groups who are very patriarchal and quite aggressive and beautiful in many other ways, but there's a lot of patriarchy in many indigenous groups. But when you meet an egalitarian group, you see a different kind of man, and it's really fascinating because it's a kind of man that is just as strong and as powerful and as themselves, more themselves than we could even imagine being, especially being English, but, you know, like really fully themselves. And yet they have clipped a part of them that's also true to them, which is the aggression and the competition. And so that's really fascinating, that there's a brotherhood, there's an equality, and they're not trying to outdo each other. There is no alpha energy, and yet they're just as strong and just as powerful as any one of us could want to be. And I think that that's really fascinating to me. You know, to live in a society where no one's telling anyone what to do means that you can be yourself. They're like, when you stand in amongst them, you realize just how English you are, because these people are like flamboyant in the most expressive way. They're fully able to say anything. And so that's really interesting too. But what I've also noticed is that they're fully able to express their emotions. They're very able to you know, stand up for what they think is right, and to just basically be fully expressed versions of themselves without any sort of limiting factors. And I think that's fascinating. And I don't think I can talk about them without also at the same time talking about the women. And the other thing that I really noticed with the egalitarian groups was that the women are probably the more powerful part of the society. And the reason that they're powerful is because they're very unified also. But what was really fascinating when I lived with this group called the Benjeli, for example, in the Congo, was that it was the first time I'd really witnessed women being this incredibly powerful force, but being themselves without any concern about how they looked or how they were being considered by the masculine. So they were fully themselves in their full femininity, using sex and laughter and song and dance and all of these things. So like basically fully themselves in their femininity, and still the most powerful force in the community. And that was really fascinating, because them being themselves and the men being themselves was this play between the two. And I think that kind of the women kind of reminding the men about the deal, that they were not to be this competitive, aggressive space. So the men holding themselves in that, and yet still being fully themselves, was kind of the thing that was so fascinating for me. And I don't know that I've explained that very well, but
no, it makes perfect sense.
It was really profound, because I sort of sensed, like, yeah, I know that I have within me the capacity to be competitive and aggressive. I can, you know, I was a Marine, you know, I know that's inside of me, and there's part of me that enjoys that. But is it the best part of me to be in a society? Is that the kind of society that we want to be in? And I think that's why I struggled with this question and with my answer is like, we can be anything we want. And so to say, what is it to be masculine? It's like, yeah, I can be the gorilla alpha male. I can be that. And so that is in me. And so you will have some people in society saying, that's what it is to be a man. And in some ways, in this society, that is what it is to be a man, because we're in a society of competition and aggression. And so if I want to get ahead, then I'd better beef up and be that guy. But that's because we're in this society. But is this the best kind of society that we can create? And I've had the privilege of living with many, and the one that sticks out is the one that doesn't have that. And that's what I'm getting at. So it's like we can be anything, but that society where they clip that, you're just as strong, you're just as masculine, you're just as wonderful and yourself, and yet we're working for each other, not trying to outdo each other. And that was the thing.
Self-conscious. Yeah.
It's just together. Just working together. And if you've got a world where I'm always trying to outdo my neighbor, I'm always trying to do this, get that, so that I can get the better girl, so that I can get the better job. It's like we're just always going to be doing that, and that's what leads to all of these issues that we're dealing with. Whereas if you're in a world where we're looking out for each other, and the girl isn't choosing the alpha, they're choosing the guy who's more in the group, then you've got a whole different kind of society. And so it's like, that's what really struck me. It's like, we can be anything we want, but what is it that we want to be? And what kind of society do we want to live in?
Thank you, Bruce.
Lovely, man. Lovely thing.
Appreciate that.
You're going to go Mojo?
There he is. It's coffee time. We just had a really lovely walk. We're all fucking freezing. Sorry, very freezing. And got some really, really nice, interesting insights from Bruce. Just a great discussion. So yeah, can't wait to share that with you. In fact, you've probably already seen it.
So you've actually only just seen half of that conversation. We have also uploaded part 2. So with these 2 videos, you'll get to see that full conversation we had with Bruce, which was absolutely incredible. He goes into also what his new book is about. So yeah, really recommend checking that out. There'll be a link to it somewhere on the screen. All right, nice one. See you in the next one.